Well, we're back again. After we learned a little bit of history about this bike, let's tear into it. Alright, now that we got the head off here, we can look down in the cylinder. Now this bike was stuck, and I had soaked it using some penetrating oil and even a little bit of diesel fuel and let that soak for days and days. And then I drained it out and took the head off, and my piston is free now. So it'll move, of course, it'll move up and down. So we can take the head gaskets off, and interesting enough, somebody was using 2 head gaskets on this deal. My guess would be on this is a pretty high compression engine, and for those that know anything about 2-strokes here, you look at the head here, there should be at least a machine kind of flat area for a squish band, and that's to aid in the prevention of pre-ignition or detonation. These bikes were somewhat notorious for it, especially on poor quality fuel. So that's probably why somebody was using that. But using a good quality high octane fuel will keep that in check, as long as you use the correct heat range spark plug as well. So next I'm going to pull the cylinder off, and then we can work on cleaning up all these parts. Now you're probably wondering, why I'm tearing it down, why I'm not just stripping it, taking the engine out of the frame and all this. Well, what I like to do with all my restorations is I like to get them running first before I mess with any of the cosmetics of the engine, because basically if you don't do these steps now, you risk chipping or scratching any paint, or if you polish these cases up, you can scuff them and fingerprint them up. You're just going to have to clean it up all later. And in this case, it's easier for me to use my harsh chemicals and everything before I have some of my finished products on here. Especially, I need to replace some gaskets and everything. So I'll kind of clean it up as I go, but I need to get the engine running. As you can tell from the other side, that the flywheel is missing, and the primary and ignition coils are kind of a little rusty, so I need to see if those will be workable and get the bike back in time. So first things first, I need to get this cylinder off and get it cleaned up so we can measure it and see what parts we need to put in this thing. We got the cylinder off finally. It was kind of stuck on there, which I anticipated. But looking at it, it looks in pretty good shape. I mean, some surface rusts and such that should hone out of there. Looking at the piston here, there's some scuffing on it and everything. This piston could, I don't know, maybe be shined up and could be used in an extreme case or an emergency case, but we're going to replace the piston rings, needle bearings, everything in there, because this thing's been sitting for so long. We just need to at least do that. But before we know what we can buy, we have to clean this cylinder up, and cylinder and head up, and we need to measure them so we know if this has been already bored over once, or if it still can accept the standard size. When we got our cylinder and head over here at the parts washer, got it off the bike, we need to clean it up here before we can start inspecting it, doing our honing operation, and then we can start our measurements to see which parts we need. Let's talk a little bit about safety. If you have a parts washer or you're thinking about getting one, always wear some type of gloves and eye protection as well. You're going to be splashing this stuff around. You don't want this stuff in your eyes, nor do you want it on your skin, because this stuff is pretty rancid, and it gets on your skin. It just doesn't come off, and it can burn, and some people can have severe allergic reactions. So you want to use some good quality gloves that will hold up to this type of solvent. Now let's get to cleaning. Well, I got our cylinder all cleaned up, and I soaked it overnight in a rust removing solvent, which I'll give some more information at the end of this show. And after removing all the rust, I can now kind of loosely inspect the cylinder for any major ridges or wear. And actually, this bike, according to the odometer, only had a few thousand miles on it, and the cylinder looks pretty good. There's just a little bit of scuffing, which could be from using improper oil or just just age. And but it's not that bad. So the next operation I need to do, because it doesn't look like I need to have this cylinder bored. If there was some major scratches or a ridge at the top of where the piston comes to top dead center as far as up as the ring goes, I would need to have this bored, and then of course that'd make ordering parts really easy, because I can have the machine shop bore it to the correct size of the next oversized piston. But this doesn't need to be bored, but I do need to clean it up before we can do and take our measurements. So my next step I'm going to do here is get out my hones. Now, a little word about hones. Honing is a finishing operation. It can't take out major grooves, major imperfections. All honing does is put a good crosshatch type finish, when done right, finish done on the bore, which helps retain oil as the engine is running, which is important in a two-stroke just as well as a four-stroke. Now, some of you might wonder, well, what type of hone, what grit, because there's all types of grits. Well, generally, when you're just doing a finishing job like I need to do here, you need to take a look at what kind of rings you're going to use. The manufacturer will typically give specifications on the type of grit you should use for the type of rings you're using. For example, if you're using just regular old iron rings in a plated cylinder, or moly rings, or chrome plated rings, not chrome moly rings, that's kind of a misnomer there. Or just really it depends on the ring manufacturer. But if you don't really know, the best recommendation is about a 240 grit. If there's heavy glazing, you may want to start with a 120 or even a 180 or a 180 to break that glaze, and then finish up with a 240. And then depending on the rings, you may go as fine as 320 or even 400, depending on the type of finish which is required by these rings. Well, some of you out there might also be wondering, when you research your hones, you're going to see that there's different mineral types for the different honing stones. And the different minerals typically that you'll find is aluminum oxide and silicon carbide. The main difference is silicon carbide is a little harder mineral, meaning it's going to last a lot longer and give you a little bit finer finish. Aluminum oxide is kind of your baseline, cheap, run-of-the-mill abrasive. It's fairly soft, so meaning your stones are going to wear pretty quickly. Your cut rate's going to be less, and that's that's what you're going to find on most run-of-the-mill hones. And the more professional ones will use higher grade minerals, especially if it's a machine operation where they put the cylinder in a fixture and run the machine in and out of it to be professionally done. For the home shop, you're probably more familiar with this type. There's also the ball type, and there's a big debate on which one you should use, and it's usually comes down to personal preference. And the thing with ball hones is you have to order them by size. So if this is a one-time operation, you can spend like $60, $70 on one hone that you're going to use one time. If you're a racer and you do this a lot, it may behoove you to get that one for your specific bikes. But if you have a lot of different cylinder sizes, that's a lot of money in hones just for one operation. So most people will opt for this because it's adjustable down to a certain size, like 2-inch, and then this one goes up to, I believe, 7 inches. And this is what you're typically going to find in most auto parts or tool stores. And this will work just great for the home engine rebuilder. Professional builders will have a specialized machine where they can do this operation more precise. So honing is more an art, not a science when you're doing it this way. So there is some technique. So if you do have a spare cylinder around, you may or may not, you might want to practice on something first, or even use something like a PVC pipe, or just something to try and practice your technique. Because as you'll see here, there is a technique to doing this. Okay, I have my hone chucked up onto a variable speed drill, and the key here is to run the drill fairly slow, and then use an in and out motion. So you're putting a crosshatch pattern for the rings to slide on and then the oil to retain on. Too steep a crosshatch pattern, the oil won't retain and it'll fall back down in the cylinder. Too shallow of an angle and the rings could tear a little bit, or you'll get abnormal ring wear, or they may not seat correctly. Plus it may retain a little too much oil and then it'll burn in the upper portion of the cylinder, which is more a problem on 4 strokes, but it is on 2 strokes as well, because the rings will not seat properly and they can have a tendency to catch, especially during break-in. Alright, well, we're about ready to start our honing operation. And what you're going to see here is I'm going to start the drill and then start working it up and down to start putting my crosshatch pattern. And the lubricant I'm just using WD-40. There's a lot of different theories out there on what you could use or what you should use. There are honing oils, but most people will use WD-40. Works good because most people have it on the shelf. But you just need something to provide a little bit of lubrication and to keep the grit in suspension as you're doing this operation. Well, we just got done with our honing. Looks real good. We got a good crosshatch going in here. Well, I got to clean this up in some good warm soapy water, clean up the head, and we'll be ready to start measuring. So until next time, I'm the Junk Man, and thanks for watching.